In part 1, we identified that Indian judiciary is experiencing signs of judicial corruption and we need to urgently do something about it. Was the solution to judicial corruption in India National Judicial Appointment Commission Act 2014? Let's see that. Do I want an independent judiciary? Yes. Do I want corrupt judiciary? No. But independence leads to corruption. Do I want judiciary to be active? Yes. Do I want them to overreach? No. But activism leads to overreach. Do I want judiciary to decide competently after due deliberation? Yes. Do I want them to take so much time to adjudicate? No. How do I resolve all these dichotomies? Answer lies in achieving a balance. Debate is on how to bring this balance. One strata of the society favors clipping of judicial independence and thereby judicial power. Others do not want to tinker with judicial independence but want to tackle the menace of judicial corruption differently. After successive government recommendations, NJAC Bill 2014 was brought on with an aim to clip judicial power. The selection system of judges was attempted to be modified by bringing in some outsiders like the law minister and two eminent legal experts as selectors. The Supreme Court struck down the NJAC bill in 2015 because it felt that it was against the basic structure of the Constitution. The legislature and executive cried foul and suggested that since judiciary has the last say and interpretation of the Constitution has never been perfect, the judiciary interpreted the bill in a manner so as to ensure that their power remains absolute. Those against the bill want a non-corrupt judiciary but without damaging the principle of judicial independence. NJAC could have brought in some balance. However, the big unanswered question is whether it is the absolute power of judiciary that citizens of India are more worried about, or the influence of the legislative or executive over the judiciary that citizens fear more. What then is the solution? In this debate of empowering the judiciary versus taming them, you would find rare examples when a strong judiciary adversely affected the law and order situation in a country. For example, it happened in Pakistan. Empowering the judiciary weakened the legislature further. However, on the other hand, you will find many examples of how a strong and independent judiciary strengthened the law and order in a country. Answers to judicial corruption, therefore, may not lie in clipping the powers of the judiciary. Instead, it might be better to let judiciary find a way of tackling corruption themselves. Contrary as it may seem, judges themselves are more disturbed about this menace. India needs to take all measures to bring in judicial reforms suggested by the law fraternity and be a signatory to international conventions and standards which address judicial corruption. These conventions provide toolkits against corruption in the government. They make the government and judiciary accountable by a system of audits, transparent procedures, suggest how to tackle complex subject of judicial immunity, and suggest checks and balances in all organs of the government. There are several international and regional norms and standards. Examples of these conventions are as flashed on the slide. The strength in all these conventions or documents is that they have been developed with consideration of different legal systems, cultures, values, and social environment. It is therefore endorsed by many states and international and regional organs over the globe. As part of judicial reforms, following are the key areas of focus for the Indian democracy. Remove internal influences. We need to ensure that we remove each and every vice or condition that usually prompts humans to become corrupt or abuse their power. Internal independence. Judges should not be prone to internal influences and vices. In other words, judiciary needs to be self-fulfilled, self-satisfied, whether it's security, finances, career advancement, or any other kind of immunity. Following may be considered towards this end. Salaries. Judges need to be free from ordinary monetary worries. UN Anti-Corruption Toolkit recognizes low salaries as a problem and that adequate remuneration for persons working within the judiciary will make them less inclined to get involved in corruption. The salaries and allowances of the judges in India are fixed and are not subject to a vote of the legislature. However, in India, remuneration of judges is far less compared to other countries. This is considered to be a reason that almost all judges after retirement get involved in some kind of activity for financial gain, some in the private sector and some in the public. Increasing the salary and pension of judges may mitigate this issue, although this is not a reliable solution because greed has no end. Security and length of tenure. In some countries like India, once appointed, the judges cannot be removed from the office unless there is an order of the president, and that too on the ground of proven misbehavior and incapacity. Judges that are guaranteed long term of office seem to be less inclined to corrupt behavior. In addition, a certain cooling off period should be imposed post-retirement, which needs to be completed before reinstating any public office, or better still, they are not given any form of re-employment post their retirement, other than any kind of participation in courts or government committees or groups at a non-attractive, fixed and a transparent remuneration structure. Influences from within the judiciary. Merit-based objective system of selection and promotion of judges. The appointment procedure of judges is very important when it comes to separation of powers. Selection and promotion of judges should be as unbiased as possible, with maximum autonomy to the judges to choose amongst themselves and with minimum interference from the legislative or the executive. It is also important that the judges exercise their judicial powers without interference from other judges or court personnel. As far as possible, judges' promotions should be based on a seniority system, following an objective rejection criteria than a subjective selection criteria. Influences from other organs of democracy. Constitutional economics. Countries need to spend an appropriate portion of its wealth on the judiciary. Underspending would undermine the principle of judicial independence because it creates a financial dependence of the judiciary on the executive. The judiciary must be effectively and authentically independent, not only from political pressures, but also from economic and social pressures. Therefore, it is important that enough resources are provided so that the judiciary can keep a high quality. Governments spend on infrastructure and manpower. Public campaigns need to be conducted to pressurize the government to increase strength of judiciary and to establish more courts. Judicial immunity. A judge cannot live with the fear of repercussion or revenge when deciding a case. A court can only be accepted as just and fair if the public has its confidence. It is therefore not only essential for the court to be independent but also to appear independent. As the proverb says, justice must not only be done but also must be seen to be done. Therefore, it is important for court personnel to refrain from any kind of contact with political parties. This would justify the judicial immunity being offered to judges. Political instability and democratic insecurity. Political instability and democratic insecurity are other potential factors that can affect the independence of the judiciary. Generally, it seems that states with high political competition and with a regular change in power tend to have a higher level of judicial integrity. In states with only one strong political force, that political party is more likely to try to get involved in the work of the judiciary in order to keep its political strength. Let us see some other reforms which will check judicial corruption. Transparency. It is important that the judiciary is transparent, that judges report the substantial law behind their decisions, and that there is some kind of autonomous supervision of the judges. In transparent systems, it is much harder to hide systematic corruption. Establish an internal institutional mechanism to deal with corruption amongst judges. Further, we may consider prescribing time limits for disposal of cases at all levels of courts. Judicial competence. A problem in many corrupt judicial systems is that the judges lack in competence. They may not have the necessary education or sufficient experience, or they may have personality or temperament problems, which makes them unsuitable as judges. Judicial diligence is fundamental for the impartial application of the law. Judges must take the responsibility to educate themselves also during their times of office, not only in national law but also in international norms and standards. A judge cannot ignore Example, human rights regulations, whether deriving from customary law, international treaties, or regional instruments, even if the local law differs from such laws. The lack of competence is also a potential factor of corruption. Audit. Establishment of an independent and transparent auditing body for gauging judicial performance and processes will improve judicial performance and bring in authenticity of judicial system and further improve the image of judiciary in the eyes of the citizens. Absence of technological equipment. Absence of technological equipment such as updated databases to keep record of judgments can be another factor that makes it easier for corrupt behavior to pass by unnoticed. Insufficient computer systems may also slow down the court processes, which can lead to a higher level of corruption, since paying a bribe might be a way to get first in line. Utilize technology to develop an efficient digital resource management system and increase productivity of courts. Codes of conduct. Codes of conduct for the judiciary are to be developed and applied, and a report system for breaches against such codes shall be at hand, as well as a system for court staff to declare their activities outside their official occupations, such as other employments, investments, assets, and substantial gifts or benefits that might raise a conflict of interest with their duty at the court. Revisit Restatement of Values of Judicial Life, a charter of judicial ethics adopted by Supreme Court in 1997, which serves as a guide to an independent and fair judiciary. Some other steps to unburden the judiciary. Fast-track courts to be further developed. Time spent in appeals. Keep only one or maximum two levels of appeal so as to unburden high courts and supreme courts. Decriminalization of regulatory or technical offences and finding alternatives to imprisonment would also improve pendency in courts and provide quick justice. Prosecution and punishment should be prompt and proportional and aimed at key offenders. An extended list of accused should be avoided as it works in favor of the offenders. Green Nyayalaya Act 2008 to establish courts at the grassroots level to provide justice to the citizens at their doorsteps was a very encouraging initiative, and such initiatives of mobile and doorstep courts needs to be expanded. Develop alternate dispute resolution mechanism. Introduce, publicize and promote settlement and mediation mechanisms. Importance of a strong judiciary cannot be overemphasized, and for that purpose their independence needs to be well maintained. At the same time, we must appreciate the concept of separation of powers, and we definitely would not want the judiciary to overreach in their judgments. The malice of judicial corruption needs to be addressed, and judicial reforms is the first step towards the same. Clipping of judicial powers may not be the answer. Thank you.